Hello, this lecture is about the basics of neonatal jaundice, a very common neonatal problem. In a simple way, me, Dr. Kotke, consultant neonatologist from Dubai. In the overview of neonatal jaundice, the following clinical questions are posed and which will be answered. Why jaundice is frequent in neonates? Bilirubin metabolism. It's important to know the bilirubin metabolism in the fetus and in the newborn to understand how neonatal jaundice differs from jaundice in adult. It's a very important concept. And then what is physiological and how does it distinguish yourself from the non-physiological jaundice. This is important because jaundice is frequent. The first line is why jaundice is frequent in neonates. Neonatal jaundice is so common that to identify the babies who have non-physiological jaundice is the job of a physician. And then once we identify that it's a non-physiological jaundice, then what are the causes of non-physiological jaundice? And why you should identify a non-physiological jaundice is that bilirubin has the potential for crossing the blood-brain barrier, a particular type of bilirubin. I'll come to that later. And it causes bilirubin neurotoxicity, which is currently terminology used for this bilirubin neurotoxicity is BIND, which is bilirubin-induced neurotoxicity or bilirubin-induced neurological dysfunction. BIND, B-I-N-D, bilirubin-induced neurological dysfunction. Then you should be doing the clinical features and the assessment, including history of a baby suffering from neonatal jaundice, especially those who are having non-physiological jaundice. Then you will plan for lab investigations and the treatment options are available as of this time, which is phototherapy and occasionally and on rare occasions an exchange transfusion and sometimes drugs, medicines. By drugs I mean medicines for jaundice. And then you should be talking about a special type of jaundice, which is prolonged jaundice and cholestatic jaundice. There has been another presentation in the same channel about prolonged jaundice and cholestatic jaundice, which is entirely a different phenomenon that has been explained well in another PowerPoint presentation. So now let's start. Why jaundice is frequent in the neonates? To come to the basics, the neonatal red blood corpuscles have a lifespan of only 60 to 90 days, whereas the adults have 120 days, if you remember your physiology. And then the bilirubin is a breakdown product of hemoglobin. 1 gram of hemoglobin will release an equivalent of 35 milligram of bilirubin, the basic equation. And babies are supposed to have, a term baby is supposed to have at least 15 grams of hemoglobin each 100 ml of blood. Okay, so 10 ml of blood will be 1.5 grams of hemoglobin, which will be around 50 milligram bilirubin for a 3 kilo baby. 50 milligram bilirubin for a 3 kilo baby. Okay, so only a hemolysis in a baby is dangerous, and lifespan of RBCs is 60 to 90 days. That means there is a massive turnover of the neonatal RBCs because half-life is shorter and there is a load of the bilirubin which the baby is not able to handle. Correct? So we'll come to the physiology cycle of metabolism of bilirubin. We'll come to that. So basic essential fact is that the neonatal RBCs have a shorter lifespan. The more premature the babies, the more shorter the lifespan is. Okay, this concept should be very clear. So now what happens to the toxic or unconjugated bilirubin that is released when the RBCs lyse? The bilirubin is taken to the liver where it is conjugated, and the conjugated bilirubin is a water soluble product which is excreted in the kidney and also in the feces. So the enzyme responsible for this conjugation is uridine glucuronide transferase, UDPG transferase. UDP glucuronidyltransferase, the level of this enzyme is only 1% of the adult levels. It multiplies and reaches the adult potential by 1 year of around 6 months to 1 year of age, means 100%. But at birth, is only 1% of the adult values. So you understand that already the load of bilirubin is high. On the top of that, the conjugation mechanism is defective, and this has the potential because it's lipid soluble. The bilirubin, which is released from the hemoglobin, is lipid soluble, and hence it can cross the blood-brain barrier and be toxic to the brain, to the immature brain. So you have to understand that there is a presence of beta glucuronidase enzyme in the gut, which what does it does is it plays a villain act in the gut. Whatever the conjugated bilirubin that reaches the gut is deconjugated. Beta glucuronidase, it breaks to the glucuronyl adjacent to the bilirubin, and again free bilirubin circulates back into the liver. This is called enterohepatic circulation. And there is image of blood-brain barrier, which makes the babies vulnerable to the neurotoxic insult of the free or the lipid-soluble bilirubin, which is unconjugated bilirubin. So this is the basic pathophysiology of neonatal jaundice, why it is very common, and why you should be able to identify the pathological or non-physiological part of it to prevent the neurotoxicity to the babies. The more premature the babies, the more vulnerable, because the load is higher, the enzyme levels are lower, and there are multiple other factors which come into play, including the blood-brain barrier is very leaky in these babies, and they are the most vulnerable to the bilirubin-induced neuronal dysfunction or bind. This bilirubin encephalopathy in preterm. In a term baby, it's called kernicterus. Okay, kernicterus is usually described in term babies, term neonates, whereas the toxicity of bilirubin in a preterm baby fits into the terminology bilirubin-induced neurological dysfunction. Right, let's move on. This is the heme metabolic pathway. Heme is a tetrapyrrole. Each pyrrole has a hemoglobin and a globin. Heme is a heme plus globin. Globin is a protein, and heme consists of iron protoporphyrin. It's a tetrapyrrole. So now the enzyme responsible for breakdown of the heme is heme oxygenase. You can see this NADP and NADPH. I'm not going into this biochemistry of it. It's just the physiology. So iron is released from that, which is taken up and then recycled. Now the breakdown product of heme is biliverdin, which is a water-soluble product. Water-soluble is good because it can be excreted to the kidney, but it is converted into bilirubin in the fetus, and in the neonate, in the fetus, it's actually it bilirubin is lipid soluble. Why it should be converted a water-soluble product, a lipid soluble? It's dangerous because to the baby is born, it is dangerous, but inside the uterus, this is a protective mechanism because a lipid soluble product will be able to cross the placental barrier and then be metabolized by the mother. For the mother's liver, the amount of bilirubin generated is only a minute fraction. So babies who are jaundiced also, or who has any other problem also, the mother is the excretion pathway, so they don't get any neurological damage or bind, which can happen in utero. Understand? This is like similar situation like all those serious congenital heart disease, other things, they don't cause any failure in the fetus because it's a fetal circulation. So the fetal physiology is entirely different from the transitional and the adult physiology. This is one of the example. Biliverdin, a water soluble product, is converted into bilirubin, a lipid soluble product, which is quite useful when the baby is in utero, but it's the most dangerous to the brain if that continues once the baby is born. Understand this? And the enzyme is heme oxygenase, and there is a biliverdin reductase. Hemoxygenase, when there is excess hemolysis, there is the generation of carbon monoxide. People have analyzed breath analysis of carbon monoxide to assess the rate of hemolysis. Hello, now coming to this bilirubin metabolic pathway, the bilirubin gets hemolyzed, released by the hemolysis process, either the extravascular, intravascular, and then this unconjugated bilirubin is taken in the blood, bound to the albumin, and then as long as it's bound to the albumin, it cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. Inside the liver, there's are transport proteins called ligandin and Z protein, which takes into the liver, and then it's conjugated and then released back into the small intestine, and then through the cystic duct, hepatic duct, it reaches the amplifier in the second part of duodenum. Once it's into the small intestine, there is another piece of small enzyme called beta glucuronidase. The beta glucuronidase is more in the breast milk also. So this is one of the reasons why breast milk babies have more unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia, because the conjugated bilirubin is again fractionated back into free bilirubin, and certain amount is again circulating. It's called enterohepatic circulation process of unconjugated bilirubin from the gut to the liver and again back and forth. So this conjugated bilirubin is acted upon by bacterial proteases. One of them is beta glucuronidase. There are some good proteases which convert them into urobilinogen and stercobilinogen. 90% is converted into stercobilinogen, which is excreted in the feces. Rest is urobilinogen, which is taken to the circulation and released, excreted via the kidney. Okay, so this is the pathway. So more amount of hemoglobin getting broken down because of F to RBC is getting destroyed. More bilirubin, less amount of albumin in case of premature babies and those who are cannot be fed or who are sick because albumin levels are low, who are not nutritionally supported. So this leads to unconjugated bilirubin entering the brain in case the metabolic pathway of conjugation and the binding process of albumin is inadequate. Get these features correctly. So a physiological jaundice can at any point be tipped to be a non-physiological process depending on many variables. Right? I come to the next slide. So physiological jaundice, I meant that jaundice is a very frequent process. 50 to 60% of babies are jaundiced. A physiological jaundice, by definition, doesn't start on the first day. If you see a visible jaundice clinically, a visible jaundice correlates with the biochemical level of 5 milligram of bilirubin. This is like you can recognize cyanosis when the deoxygenated hemoglobin is 5 grams or more. So like similarity, only if the bilirubin level is 5 milligram or above, you can visualize the jaundice starting from the face clinically in a baby. And normally the physiological jaundice peaks at the end of the first week, a little bit later by 10 days in preterm babies, and then it's back to the baseline, means non-visible or almost clearance phase by 10 days in a term baby or by 2 weeks, 14 days in a preterm baby. The peak levels don't exceed 10 to 15 milligram, the physiological jaundice, and the baby remains well all throughout. A baby with physiological jaundice, because it's physiological, the baby has to remain well. It means baby has to be feeding well, baby has to be gaining weight, should be active. It is active feeding baby, as all neonatologists know. A healthy baby is active and it will be accepting feeds or taking feeds on by itself. So what all counts? The onset of the jaundice, we should never be in the first 24 hours. The peak level of the jaundice, this will be towards the end of the first week or by 10 days. The peak, and that is the duration of jaundice, and the peak level of the jaundice around 7 to 10 days, and coming back within the 14 days. The 14 days cutoff is very important, as I say that any jaundice persisting beyond 14 days in a term baby or 21 days in a more preterm baby is called prolonged jaundice. The etiopathogenesis and the evolution of that is entirely different from the approach to the babies who are jaundiced in the first week of life. That's the majority of babies, and which is being discussed in this presentation. Let's move on now to the next slide. So what is non-physiological jaundice? Whatever is not physiological has to be non-physiological. So what are the factors which are the villains or the pace which will be able to recognize? I already told you, any visible jaundice within 24 hours means a jaundice which is exceeding a biochemical level of 5 mg within the first 24 hours of life is non-physiological, clear non-physiological. And an incremental level of more than 5 mg, the level of appreciation, it's not appreciation, it's a jump in bilirubin, a quantum jump in bilirubin. If it is more than 5 mg in 24 hours each day, if it jumps more than 5 mg, you can actually fractionate that. Means 12 hours 2.5, 4 hours, like that, you can calculate like that. In cases where there is a borderline cases whether to initiate therapy or not, this is one philosophy used. We see the incremental, and to decide about an escalation of therapy from phototherapy to exchange transfusion, also the response to phototherapy, whether the bilirubin is keeping in control, is based upon this formula. The rate of rise should be kept below 5 milligram per 24 hours. Another thing is settled is most of these recent textbooks will mention the bilirubin in micromoles per liter, which is 17.1 times the bilirubin in expressed in milligram. So you have to multiply by 17.1. Most of the bilirubin charts in moles, millimoles, micromoles per liter. So in that way, you have to multiply it by 17.1 is a conversion factor. Keep it in mind, 17.1 is the conversion factor for conversion of, this is 5 mg into 17.1. So conjugated jaundice is always abnormal. As we told, as this is the physiological jaundice is due to the breakdown of excess breakdown of FeT/RBCs. It has to be a unconjugated bilirubin. So any conjugated bilirubin, by definition, a conjugated jaundice means the conjugated fraction exceeds 20% of the total bilirubin value detected. So conjugated jaundice is abnormal. In the first week of life, it's often due to torch infection. In a baby more than 14 days is an entirely different topic of discussion. It's part of another presentation. Any signs of neurotoxicity, even though the levels might be below the line for initiation of therapy, signs of neurotoxicity. A baby whose lethargy, poor feeding, tone abnormalities, or more significantly a motor response, abnormal motor response, hung up or delayed motor response, which is unexplainable due to any other reason, clear-cut reason, has to be attributed to neurotoxicity, because apart from hypoxia, the other major neuron damaging process in a baby is the bilirubin, the unconjugated bilirubin. Apart from other major neurological events that can happen in preterm baby. In a term baby, it's hypoxia versus hypobilirubinemia and occasionally hypoglycemia. These are the major neurotoxic villains of term baby. So three things: hypoglycemia, hypoxia, or hyperbili. So let's move on to the next slide. So the etiology of pathological jaundice. A non-physiological jaundice, a pathological jaundice means jaundice onset at the one day of life is what? It's hemolytic unless proven otherwise. Repeat, it's hemolytic unless proven otherwise. So hemolytic jaundice is due to blood group incompatibilities. Order incompatibility, ABO or minor group incompatibility could be due to RBC surface defects like congenital spherocytosis, GCSP deficiency, enzyme deficiency, and a hemolysis can be happening due to blood loss in the baby or blood accumulation in the blood cavities of the baby. It can be a cephalohematoma or a subgaleal hematoma. This is very important because your physical examination in a jaundice baby is not complete until and unless you document and rule out either this way or that way presence of scalp swelling, especially a cephalometoma, which is a periosteal accumulation of blood. Right? It can be exaggerated jaundice, can be maternal oxytocin induced. It can be a septic baby can have excessive breakdown of hemoglobin. Hypothyroidism and gut obstruction due to pylori stenosis or duodenal atresia. And there is something called breastfeeding jaundice, which is inadequacy of breastfeeding. A starved baby, you know, this glucuronic acid is derived from galactose. Galactose is from lactose, which is a milk sugar. So if you are not feeding a baby well, and breast milk volume, when colostrum is physiologically lower in the first 3 days of life, and the colostrum output is just maximum can be an ounce per day. It's 30 ml per day, which is inadequate for majority of the babies. And if they are not able to withstand this starvation process, babies will become jaundiced. This is one of the reasons of breastfed babies having higher levels of bilirubin than formula-fed babies. And rarely pathological, any cholestatic jaundice is pathological. Right? 20% of the bilirubin, total bilirubin, if it is unconjugated, then it is cholestatic jaundice or conjugated jaundice, which is an entirely different topic of discussion. Let's move on to the see the slide in full. We'll go to the next slide, please. So the bilirubin neurotoxicity, I told it's only the unconjugated bilirubin that causes neurotoxicity, and this because of increased permeability of the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier permeability is increased at hypoxia, hypocobia by the low levels of albumin, other neurotoxic insults including asphyxia, and prematurity by itself. And in a term baby, the end result of massive bilirubin assault is connectress, which is characterized by a motor dysfunction, a dyskinetic cerebral palsy, a deafness, sensory neuronal deafness, and dentin enamel hypoplasia. Right. And now there is by bedside clinical examination, motor response, uncovered motor response, abnormal tone, officer tonus is suggestive of signs of connectress, and auditory brainstem evoked response or brain evoked response audiometry, BERA or ABER, what do we call it, is useful bedside test, especially BERA bedside is useful bedside test to assess the risk of neurotoxicity in a jaundice baby and also the response to the treatment and also in prognostication. Let's move to the next slide. So here if you slice the brain of a baby who has died of connectress, you can see icterus means yellow staining, and by connectress what we mean, I'll just highlight to you here. We by connectress, here it is, you can see this is this basal ganglia which was stained with the bilirubin. Icterus means staining, means it is the basal ganglia which are stained. Cerebellum and basal ganglia are the most easily affected parts due to bilirubin encephalopathy. This is the pathology of the brain of a baby dying with connectress. Next, this baby, unfortunate baby, if a jaundice baby does like this, that's a real neuromedical or neuroneonatal emergency. See the posture of this baby, the hands are pinched and the head position, retrocolis, it's retro, which we don't like this retro. I want to be retro in life, to want to be younger, but this baby is a retrocolis. The neck is bent backwards. In spite of attempts to correct it, this baby maintain the same posture. It means that it's retrocolis, which is a dangerous sign, clear-cut sign of connectress. We need to do an urgent exchange transfusion as soon as possible. An exchange transfusion stat, that's the only procedure which will bring down the bilirubin quite fast by 50%. If a procedure which is done in 45 minutes, it can halve the levels of bilirubin. So it will massively bring down the levels of bilirubin from the toxic levels to subnormal levels and brings to controllable levels. So this is a baby. I'll tell the story of this baby. You should also, after seeing the story, you should be very vigilant and aggressive in looking out for jaundice. This was a mother B negative, baby O positive, and the mother had received anti-D in the first pregnancy, the second pregnancy. Mother received anti-D in the first pregnancy, and in this pregnancy, mother has tested ICT negative. For those who don't know, this ICT means indirect Coombs test, which is sort of identification of babies which are born to a mother. High risk. The stratification of mothers RH with RH incompatible status is by the indirect Coombs test. Means the mother has antibodies which can attack the baby. This was negative in this baby. So no one expected that this baby could have an RH isomerization, but always medicine is known to throw nasty bouncers at you. Right, okay. So the bilirubin in this baby at 23 hours. This baby, I remember one of the junior doctors was calling a doctor who was on call as consultant. So but unfortunately some miscommunication, and because of this background history, the recognition of the junior doctor of a baby looking yellow was overlooked by the person who is on call. But by 23 hours, by 12 hours, the 12 hours, baby was found to be jaundiced at 2 hours. There was a slight delay because of this history. A bilirubin, first bilirubin was done at 23 hours, which was 18. By that time, the hemoglobin has dropped to what? 8.5. In such a massive hemolysis, almost half of the blood is gone. From 15 to 8.5 means you see the volume of hemolysis. This baby was immediately shifted to a facility where exchange transfusion can be done, and 2 double volume exchange transfusions were done within 24 hours. The second exchange transfusion was done albumin aided transfusion, because albumin is supposed to extract the bound bilirubin, which is, see, the bilirubin is looking for places to bind. If there is not enough albumin, it will bind to whichever place, including the neurons where it binds. In this coupling, the coupling of bilirubin to the unwanted places is little bit weaker. Albumin can still extract back into the circulation, and still it can be removed from the blood. So there is a logic of albumin primed exchange transfusion. This was a time when IV immunoglobulin was available, but this sequence of events were very fast. That giving IV immunoglobulin would be a waste of the drug, because the drug would be taken away by the exchange transfusion. Right. So albumin, intravenous immunoglobulin, if at all to be given, it is given to prevent the exchange transfusion, either first or better the second one. So, but in this case, see a massive drop in hemoglobin within 24 hours. The hemoglobin has almost dropped to 50%, and the bilirubin has jumped to 18, and within first 24 hours, very dangerous. So the clinical picture of the previous slide is 1 hour of arrival from the referring hospital before planning the first day. On seeing the hemoglobin, transfer the baby to and prepare for exchange transfusion. Take samples from mother and baby, shift the baby out. That was on seeing the hemoglobin, not seeing the bilirubin. Correct. So the officer told us on nitrocolis after the second transfusion also, I was following them clinically. They lasted for 5 days, and there was a sunsetting sign which was lasting for 10 days. Baby stayed for 14 days. And by this time, we are very sure that this baby is going to have a definite kernicterus. This was the last kernicterus I saw, which is in 2013. Right, okay. And then after these babies are getting followed up, we had a brainstem evoked heart response, which was initially reported as normal. So physicians have to be have an idea of the other disciplines as well. I said I cannot believe this report. It cannot be normal unless you know and have seen a brainstem heart evoked response output. There are 5 waves in it. Each wave is generated at a particular point of auditory pathway, starting from the cochlear apparatus. back to the nucleus in the brain. I said this wave 5. Wave 5, if it is absent, that's a definite indication that the brain is affected. So in this we also repeat it at 100 decibels there was no wave 5 identified in the BERA. So this was a definite case for a cochlear implant. There's financial aspects of it, and then we send to a reputed ENT surgeon who will do cochlear implant for this baby. So that should make you alert and be proactive in assessing jaundice, and you should not hesitate. Junior doctors should not hesitate to escalate if they have doubts that a baby is not the the doctor to whom they report is not taking the suggestion seriously, because jaundice is a serious thing that can affect the brain. Going by the test history, whatever might be there, medicine is known for throwing nasty bounces at you. So be prepared and duck. You should be able to duck. The severe jaundice is assessed by cephalocaudal progression of jaundice, which is called by the Kramer's rule. And Pompson sole staining is the last step in the bilirubin binding, because Pompson's also thicker skin and they are less vascular than the rest of the part. Face is the most highly vascular part, thinner surface, so it is the first place where the jaundice is visible. And there's a cephalocaudal progression of jaundice. There's a picture of the baby with the Kramer's rule imprinted on it. Okay, next slide. And then by clinical assessment is able to assess the etiology of jaundice, the evidence of hemolysis pallor, and hepatosplenomegaly. And then I said you should look for bruise and cephalohematoma and subgaleal hematoma. Activity level of the baby, milk, breast or formula milk matters, and the weight loss. Always your examination of a jaundice baby is not complete until and unless you examine for tone abnormalities and also hung up or incomplete motor response. This is very important. Tone and motor response and looking for sunset sign is very important. So these are the three aspects of evaluation of a jaundice baby. Severity of jaundice, etiology of jaundice, and evidence of neurotoxicity. These are by clinical techniques. So I disappear. See the slide fully. We move on to the next slide. This is the baby with the Kramer's rule imprinted on it. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, Zone 4, Zone 5. Zone 5 is the pumps and soles, more than 20 milligram. Zone 4 is legs and the forearms, which is 20 mg. Zone 3 is abdomen up to the thighs, 15 mg. And Zone 2 is the chest, which is 10. Face and the neck is 5 mg. Now here coming to transcutaneous bilirubinometer, a Billy check. Now we have advanced generation of transcutaneous bilirubinometers which have exact correlation with the clinical assessment of jaundice and also to the lab bilirubin. Understand? So there are second generation and third generation transcutaneous bilirubinometers have come. Why these come? Because first of all, jaundice assessment, you have to see many babies frequently, and you should have the eyes of very keen eyes to look into specific. To be able to methodical examination of baby is very important. And in dark skin individuals, African babies, you may not, and you will definitely miss the severity of jaundice. In order to obviate that, the bilirubinometer is an objective check. Again, it's medical legal. See, you saw Kennictrus baby, even with the ICT negative, but baby is jaundice, baby develops Kennictrus. Kennictrus baby, if we end up in a lawsuit of a Kennictrus baby, a cerebral palsy child to rise for 20 years, plus the loss of income for the baby, loss of income for the mother. So the calculations, you understand, it will easily work out to millions of dollars. So for a medical legal reason, documentation of transcutaneous bilirubinometer objective way, because you can say, baby is not jaundice. No, there's no escape route. You have to document it either by lab bilirubin or. So the current usefulness of The rules are that you can monitor your transcutaneous bilirubin, but before starting treatment, a treatment is based upon a lab bilirubin. It's not a transcutaneous bilirubin, it's confirmed. And any bilirubin which is 14 or above, it's a zone where TCB or transcutaneous bilirubin does the correlation coefficient is not that good, and the bilirubin levels are 14 and above. These two is to keep in mind. Whenever you plan to start treatment or stop treatment, there should be a lab bilirubin. This is documented in the file. But transcutaneous bilirubinometer for in general ways as a pre-discharge check in normal babies with a physiological jaundice is sufficient, and it is will protect you. So document a transcutaneous bilirubinometer on the file in the discharge summary. Now let's move on to the next. So laboratory investigations in a jaundice baby will obviously include a serum bilirubin, blood grouping, orange typing of the baby, and in case of mother's blood group is in doubt, better take for mother as well. And blood count, peripheral smear, and Coombs test, direct Coombs test here I mean. And GCSPD assay relevant ethnic groups, and if needed, investigations for prolonged jaundice. So basically, any evaluation for non-physiology jaundice will have to assess for hemolysis, a hemoglobin drop, a reticount increase, a peripheral smear that is suggested hemolysis, which in ABO incompatibility there will be a specific pattern will be there, microspirocytes, and also a positive direct Coombs test. A G6PD assay in relevant ethnic groups. There can be people can be looking for albumin as well as a blood hemoglobin also. Right. Let's move on to the next slide now. So the treatment, I said, the common initiation of treatment which is non-invasive is phototherapy. The level to start as a rule of thumb is half of the exchange value. So for term well babies, value exceeding 5 mg on day 1, 10 mg on day 2, 15 milligram for beyond day 3. These are general rule of thumb. This rule of thumb means out of box, which is this be able to remember these rules. Every time you cannot read the books or charts, but if you find a baby who is needing treatment, plot it in a proper chart so that you can monitor the response to treatment and also justify your management also. So a preterm baby, usually a transcutaneous bilirubinometer itself is not that much valid, is not validated in premature babies as of now. Trials are going on, but still not validated. So transcutaneous bilirubinometer only for term babies has the, or at least more than 35 weeks gestation. For less than that, it has to be always a lab bilirubin. Prophylactic phototherapy is a concept which I introduced earlier on. The phototherapy will work only if there is dermal bilirubin staining for the skin, because phototherapy acts on the skin bilirubin skin, which is bound to the skin, and then there are metabolic products including lumirubin which are excreted in the urine. Right? So this one, the skin is the not the other things which is absorbed. So prophylactic phototherapy, I said normally the phototherapy is effective when the bilirubin levels are more than 5, and prophylactic phototherapy is started in those babies who are less than 1 kilos, normally started within the first day or towards the end of the first day, and in badly bruised babies because each hemoglobin, 1 gram of hemoglobin produces 35 milligram of bilirubin. So that is a concept. Only some people use this terminology, prophylactic phototherapy. That means before the levels touch the lines for initiating phototherapy. But now after the advent of the NICE charts, it is there is no concept of prophylactic phototherapy, because I will show you the lines of the NICE guidelines for phototherapy. It starts from 0 hours of life. So within 24 hours, the cutoff for starting phototherapy is what we were thinking, that prophylactic phototherapy. So it is a phototherapy as indicated by NICE chart, which we were previously referring as something like prophylactic phototherapy. Clear? So any baby TCB, especially when you suspect baby jaundice, a transcutaneous bilirubin estimation of bilirubin, dermal bilirubin can start within the first 24 hours of life. And in situations where you suspect non-physiological jaundice, it is prudent that you order for frequent checks of transcutaneous bilirubin and coupled with lab bilirubins wherever you think it's needed, especially before treatment initiation and in stopping and following up response to the treatment. Next. So these are essentially now NICE guidelines. The National Institute of Clinical Excellence. Expansion of NICE is National Institute of Clinical Excellence is in UK. They have studied and formed a work group and task force which brought these guidelines, and there are charts. These charts are gestation specific. Starting from 23 weeks, we have each gestation has got a plot of and it is plotted in, as I told, it's not in milligram. You can have a careful look at this chart. I will also have a look. This is total bilirubin in micromoles per liter. I can show it. This is micromoles per liter. The multiplication factor for grams to micromoles per liter is 17.1. And as I told you here, see, start from 0 hours of life. So I told you 5 milligram was previously cut off. So people thought that initiation of phototherapy before that is only in situations where we have a baby who is badly bruised or in extreme preterm babies, especially less than 1 kilo babies. Okay. So, but the terminology is almost off, because you see this red line is the line where we are supposed to perform a rapid bilirubin bringing down procedure, which is exchange transfusion, invasive procedure, and this is the phototherapy, which are the two options which are currently available and accepted options of treating jaundice, neonatal jaundice. See, the splay between these lines is narrower in the first 24 hours of life. You can see this play, the angle separation is very low. As the day goes up, the baby matures, this play, the angulation is more wider. So that just in fact reflects the babies are more vulnerable, and the neurotoxicity of bilirubin, the villain is, the risks of it are higher as the baby is lower. All the charts, if you see, after third day, the levels of intervention is a flat line. It means the baby's blood-brain barrier is reasonably mature by the end of 72 hours, and the splay between the lines of phototherapy and exchange transfusion remains static after that. These are nice charts. You are supposed to justify your treatment based upon your colleagues who are in higher educational institutions and who are dedicated to researching, and they are able to assess and analyze the facts derived from many clinical scenarios. These are nice guidelines. National Institute of Health and Clinical Excellence, NHS, NIC. I told it's gestation specific, and this is an Excel sheet where this is box is there. So you have to just type the gestational age, and then the corresponding graph you can download and plot for the particular baby. You can in fact type out the baby's details and enter just the gestation here, and you print a baby specific, gestation specific bilirubin chart for initiation, following up the treatment, and justification of the treatment lies in this chart. And you can show to your parents or the caregivers to convince them of the need for initiation of treatment, and that you are following scientific principles in managing the baby. Right. Please see the full slide before we move on. Move on now. This is the phototherapy. This baby is the eyes and genitals of a baby, male baby. Genitals of male baby, and the eyes should be covered. Light is toxic to genitals and to the eyes. People in extreme preterm babies, people cover the site of ductus arteriosus, means infraclavicular areas also. Previously, it is thought that the risk of duct reopening is higher with the light exposure. What we see here on the left bottom panel is a Billy blanket. This is light source, this is Billy blanket, and this is a Billy blanket. This will wrap the baby. This will obviate the need for eye coverage, and babies are can be nursed as well, and they have eye-to-eye contact as well. And this will serve as a source of additional source of phototherapy as well, coupled with the overhead source. Sometimes we get triple phototherapy, combining units, and this sort of photosphere, in like a photosphere in which the baby is exposed to light all around. So these are techniques where how phototherapy is given these days. Billy blanket is demonstrated here. A Billy blanket is doesn't heat up the baby. Next. So as I told the nursing details of phototherapy babies, continuous phototherapy is preferred, but babies can be taken out for feeds. Usage ensures good hydration, but no water or dextrose water is normally indicated, except when the baby is having weight loss. There is no need to give extra IV fluids or supporting with extra fluids. Special blue lights with high irradiance up to 50 micrometer per centimeter square per nanometer. The irradiance level is the force of the light which is activating the chemical process at the skin level. It has to be at least 6 to 12 micrometer per centimeter square per nanometer in the traditional phototherapy, or the normal way phototherapy is delivered by the normal lamps. But intensive phototherapy will deliver 40 to 50 micrometer per centimeter square. Centimeter square is surface area of the skin. Nanometer is the wavelength. Micrometer is the energy. So micrometer per centimeter square per nanometer. Billy blanket I told, convenience, no need for eye patch. But remember, phototherapy is for unconjugated bilirubin. It's never to be used for conjugated bilirubin. When the conjugated fraction exceeds 20% total bilirubin, very rarely those babies will need phototherapy. If you unknowingly, unwarrantedly you expose a conjugated baby or a baby with conjugated jaundice to phototherapy, what you get is a bronze baby syndrome, a tan baby, a differently tanned baby you will get. And by phototherapy, we can achieve a maximum drop off with the high intensity phototherapy, 33% decrease in 24 hours. Around 4 milligram by traditional route, 2 to 4 milligram in a day is the maximum bilirubin drop we can achieve with lights normally. With high intensity, we can achieve up to 33% decrease in the bilirubin. Next. So other invasive procedure is exchange transfusion. The lines of exchange transfusion, these are rules of thumb rules. 10 milligram, 15 mg, 20 25 mg before. These are rules of thumb. And before, during our days, there is a rule of thumb. This way also in preterm babies, the rule of thumb was that 10 into 18 kilos. So for 1 kilo baby, 10 milligram, 1.5, 15 milligram, like that. This is a rule of thumb. But nowadays, when the nice charts of thumb, then we are supposed to plot and justify our action or inaction also. Inaction means not initiating any treatment by plotting them in the nice chart. So normally we do a double volume exchange transfusion, which is by a push-pull technique. The blood volume of the baby is 80 to 100 ml per kilo. So doubling means 2 into 80, 160 ml per each kilo of the baby. That much blood volume you are going to exchange. It's not that you push in two volumes of blood to the baby and then take out. It's a push-pull technique. In aliquots of equal aliquots, we remove blood and give blood simon, and they each exchange. There's exchange at aliquot level, not the whole volume level, and this will achieve a drop of 60%. You saw that phototherapy with intensive phototherapy only 33%, one-third drop of the total will be achieved in 24 hours. If you want a rapid drop, this pulls it down by 60%, so that neurotoxic risk is brought down dramatically. So any baby who has neurotoxic signs or early signs of kernicterus, the answer is exchange transfusion, and in the meantime initiate phototherapy and exchange transfusion. And this exchange transfusion has to be done fast to save you medically. It's an exchange transfusion that can rapidly bring the levels of bilirubin to values as low as 60% of the pre-exchange bilirubin values. There have been drugs which have been experimented before that range from 10 mesoporphyrins at one stage in late 1990s. People were thinking that it would be accepted that along with one injection vitamin K in the other thigh, one injection mesoporphyrin or metaporphyrin will be given and babies will be jaundice free and obviously Kennictus free world. But this was an European concept, it's a Greek concept which was never taken that well in America and other studies, and that has mostly died down now. There were two excellent studies which said that it was useful in babies with ABU incompatibility GCPD deficiency, and it was found to be good in reducing the limit need for phototherapy. At that time, it was thought that it's a potentially novel way of management, like it competes with the an iron pyrrole, tetra iron pyrrole is the hemoglobin. So you give another tetra pyrrole. The tin is instead of iron, it's a tin mesoporphyrin, so that the hemoxidase gets pulled out, and instead of breaking down hemoglobin, it just sits upon and does whatever it wants with this dummy heterogen. It's a dummy only. That is a beautiful concept, but unfortunately, it didn't find much acceptance in the scientific community. It's not indicated, not in any recommendations. Ursodeoxycholic acid is used for Crigler-Najjar syndrome and cholestatic jaundice. It especially used for mothers also to relieve the pruritus. The cholestatic symptoms are relieved by ursodeoxycholic acid 5 mg to 10 mg per each kilo maximum. And then intravenous immunoglobulin, I already told you, this has FC receptor blockade, and it will reduce the hemolysis happening in the macrophages and the spleen. So this is when the rate of bilirubin is rise of bilirubin is so high that you anticipate an exchange transfusion within the next around more than 6 hours later. Okay, so you need some time frame. The intravenous immunoglobulin, the process of immunoglobulin will take 3 to 4 hours. So after that, the maximum effect will come in another 12 hours. So only if the baby is right now for exchange transfusion, then it has no value, because if you give immunoglobulin and then remove the blood, the immunoglobulin is also pulled out along with the exchange transfusion process. So ideal is after an exchange transfusion, you give intravenous immunoglobulin so that the need for repeat exchange transfusion is totally avoided, or you monitor in anticipated case of hemolytic or pathological jaundice serial levels and give intravenous immunoglobulin as soon as possible. Correct. Traditionally, a phenobarbital, which was supposed to an enzyme inducer. Phenobarbital is an enzyme inducer which increases the levels of all liver enzymes, including UDPGT. So theoretically, people thought that the conjugation process will improve, and the neurotoxic unconjugated bilirubin will be converted into conjugated bilirubin when you give a course of phenobarbital, but it was never proven to be the case as a definite treatment for neonatal jaundice. Yet it is given when you want to rule out an extrahepatic biliary atresia or a defective excretion pathway in the liver. This will induce the enzymes to the maximum level. So at that level, if there is no excretion, then it is a proven case of extrahepatic biliary apparatus or failure of the excretory process of the biliary radicals. So a 5-day course of phenobarbital is given prior to a radionuclide scan of the liver in the assessment of cholestatic jaundice. That's the role of phenobarbital in the current scenario of management of neonatal jaundice. I'll come to the next slide. Prolonged jaundice and cholestatic jaundice are defined as prolonged jaundice more than 14 days in term, 21 days in preterm. Although this forms a part of another PowerPoint presentation, you have to, etiology levels is more important. Prolonged jaundice, not the bilirubin levels. It's the etiology you identify, especially an eminently treatable etiology, that is extrahepatic biliary atresia, because the Kasai's procedure is a surgical procedure, has to be initiated before 10 weeks of life to give this baby a transplant free and a jaundice free survival up to adolescence. So we'll see in a subsequent place. This majority causes these babies are healthy, thriving due to breast milk jaundice. And yes, conjugated bilirubinemia is dangerous, especially when it has prolonged jaundice. And the conjugated fraction is more than 20% of the total bilirubin. This is termed as a conjugated jaundice or conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So these are a list of things which we use for conjugate hyperbilirubinemia. Extrahepatic biliary atresia has to be ruled out, and then there are many other syndromes which extend the spectrum from neonatal hepatitis spectrum to extrahepatic biliary atresia spectrum. Now it is a continuum that neonatal hepatitis is an inflammatory process that starts in utero, and as the terminal process of fibrosis happens, it leads to the extrahepatic biliary atresia. Two treatable causes, three I would say: urinary tract infection, hypothyroidism, and malaria in tropical countries can also cause prolonged conjugated hyperbilirubinemia or cholestatic jaundice. So next slide. This pathway for evaluation of prolonged jaundice. So this is part of another presentation in the same channel. Please have a careful read of the other presentation on prolonged jaundice in the newborn and apparently well baby. Okay. So with that, I summarize that jaundice is a very commonly observed event in babies. That's because of the excessive breakdown of fetal hemoglobin. Each gram of hemoglobin releases 35 milligram of bilirubin. The hemoglobin content per 100 ml in a baby is 15 grams 100 ml, and the blood volume of the baby is 80 ml per kilo. So a baby with 3 kilos is 240 ml. In that we have 30 plus another around 40 grams of 40 or around 30 to 40 grams of bilirubin is 30 to 40 grams of hemoglobin is the total hemoglobin in the baby. So in that blood volume, 35 mg of bilirubin is blood, means you can get a calculation. So it is very common, 60 to 70%. But you have to identify the babies who are having non-physiological pathological jaundice. Jaundice onset in the first day is pathological unless proved otherwise, and any non-physiological jaundice is due to hemolysis unless proved otherwise. Workup of pathological non-physiological jaundice includes to look for hemoglobin drop, to look for a retic count, direct Coombs test, and a hemoglobin or albumin levels to assess and a peripheral smear to look for evidence of hemolysis. These are all investigations, and a blood group of a baby and the mother, essential part of investigation. Look out for bleeds and bruises. And then Kramer's rule of cephalocaudal progression of jaundice, the usefulness of transcutaneous bilirubinometry, the treatment options available: phototherapy, exchange transfusion. Look for neurotoxic signs in any jaundice babies. Erythrocolis is a very dangerous sign. Always elicit motor response, document on the file. And a connectress baby, if that was preventable and you physician didn't act upon, is a clear-cut medico-legal case. So jaundice is physiological, but it is, and it can be a villain for the baby and as well as the health professionals depending upon the particular situation. With those words, I say thank you. This is Dr. Karthikeyan, consultant neonatologist, Dubai. This presentation was on the basics of neonatal jaundice. Thank you again for being with me.